Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Travis Jr. I just want to take this brief opportunity. It's not too often that individuals have an opportunity to have a platform to reach viewers, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk briefly about the incident that occurred yesterday in the city of San Jose, Northern California, at the Valley Transportation Authority light rail facility. As we know, through reports, there's still information still coming out, but it is truly a tragic event. 8 individuals lost their lives. And those are someone's family members, friends, support system, that guidance that people look to. As myself being part of the public transportation community, you can ask any bus operator, train operator, anybody in public transportation, and they will tell you, it doesn't matter what company, where you work, we are all one. We are all brothers and sisters in the industry. To hear and see those images of chaos from a simple meeting of employees was absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. And I'm going to jump on a soapbox for a brief moment. Now, anybody who knows me knows I support the Second Amendment, but at the same time, I support common sense a lot more. We will always see politicians, and especially politicians that have the ability to enact change, send their thoughts and prayers. So I tell those politicians, save your thoughts, save your prayers, save your condolences, because those members in Congress have the ability to enact change. It is common sense for individuals to say criminals should not have firearms. It is common sense that those with mental disabilities or unstable minds should not have firearms. It's common sense. I pray for the day that will come where we will not have to have families lose loved ones over gun violence, because that's exactly what's occurring. And for them, just a brief moment of silence for those 8, and a speedy recovery for all of those that has suffered injuries as a result of that incident. Thank you. And I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for the somber, but again, there's not too many times that individuals have a platform to be able to express those frustrations and the need for change to take place. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with somebody who is not a stranger to the city of Oxnard, who is not a stranger to this show. He's been on our show when we had our election night coverage. He was on the show last year, or actually the beginning of this year, or sorry, I'm not even going to try to figure it out. He was on the show. We had a great conversation, and he became the elected official for Council District 2 when the city was faced with 3 choices: appoint someone to complete the 2 years, hold a special election, or the hybrid option, appoint and the special election. Well, City Council went with the hybrid option, and Gabe Teran ended up being appointed as the council member for District 2. And believe me, he has hit the ground running, doing his weekly videos. I'm keeping the community informed about city council agenda items, committee items, so that people had all the information and had the opportunity to go voice their support or opposition to any item. And of course, his videos have been tailored a little bit, but you know what? We'll just talk to him directly. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me, Councilman Gabe Teran.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate it. And, I want to thank you for those words too. I agree with that. My heart aches for anyone who's a victim of violence, let alone gun violence that could have been prevented by any number of common sense regulations that could have happened at the federal, state, or any local levels as well. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, thank you. it's a tragic thing, especially with the number of events that continue to occur. And, we saw just, last month, two incidents, and, it's truly a tragic situation. But, we keep those individuals in our thoughts, but we'll try to be uppity for tonight's episode, as we talk about you and how the transition from resident to Parks and Recs commissioner, member of the INCO, and now an elected official representing the second district here in the city of Oxnard. So tell us, how was that for you to, one, be named the appointed member, and then how has the transition been, stepping into that role as an elected official?
So first thing I'm going to say is I can already hear, rightfully so, people out there who are saying, Daniel Chavez, he's not an elected official, he's an appointed official. You can call me whatever you want. Totally great with it. I am good with that. Appointed, elected, city council member, city councilman. You know what? I'm here to represent the district. I'm here to represent the people of Oxnard. If that was through appointment or election, I'm here. I'm going to take advantage of the time to make positive change in the community in any way that I can. So I just want to throw that out there right there, just because I'm sure there are people shouting at their screen saying, he's not elected, Daniel. Not yet, folks. Anyways, so to answer your question about the transition, I have to give complete props to the CAG system, the Citizens Advisory Groups, and to the INCO. I feel that me getting involved with those two systems, when I started getting really into being more involved in local civic engagement in the city of Oxnard, really prepared me for this role of council member. Just hearing from constituents, interacting with the community, hearing concerns, bringing that to staff, but also in the preparing for things that people don't see, reading reports, doing research, meeting with staff, meeting with other people about a specific item, so you're prepared for that item when it comes to you. And I know that Councilmember Perello says this all the time, and I fully agree with him on it, that anyone out there who has any interest or even an inkling of getting involved in more city level work, the CAGs, the Parks and Rec Community Services Commission, the Commission on Homelessness, the Cultural Arts Commission, the Planning Commission, they are all just great ways to get involved, but also show you what really goes into having a city like ours function. I learned so much by getting involved in that, and it really prepared me for this. And so much so that many of the people who also applied for the appointment, I offered to them, I said, you would be so great. They had some really great ideas they brought to the table. And I said, I think it'd be great if you got involved in a CAG as well. And I offered, what are some interest areas? Here's where I see some strengths for you. Are these some things you would be interested in? And so I'm all about getting people involved in that stuff, even if they want to go to council or not, so they can see behind the scenes on how this all works. So that really helped with the transition. Really, and the council member role now, to be completely honest with you, the transition, because I had all that prep ahead of time from those other systems, wasn't really a very steep one. I mean, there's a lot more broad stuff. The joke I always said when people ask me was, well, I was already reading the staff reports, but now I have to read the stuff that doesn't interest me too. So that was really a great prep work, is really just being able to look at the details, see all the information, talk to people, talk to staff, to be able to make an informed decision when you're up there on the dais. Well, the virtual dais at this point.
Yeah, of course. And, and I get it. Some people will, get tripped up about the correct wording, elected official, the way it is he's an official, whether you like it or not. He's been appointed, he's in that position. So you're official. That's the way I see it. Because you're making decisions on very important topics, budgets and, awarding contracts. These are decisions that you're making, and only officials will be able to make that. And just for the public, if you were wondering what he was talking about, CAGs, those are citizen advisory groups. So the acronym is just CAG. And I will agree with you that those that don't know, participating in one of those CAGs, depending on the CAG, you could actually be reading very large staff reports. I myself, being on the planning commission, we get very stacked packets of staff reports, and we have to go through every single page and document, and then render a decision or a recommendation. So it is very, it's a lot of information to digest. I want to ask, because when you were last on the show, I asked you the question, if you had planned on running. And then later on, we had, the decision from the city council make, deciding which path to take. Family was one of your priorities that needed to be addressed before making your decision. How has the transition been for your family, your wife, your kids?
They've been my biggest supporters of all. And, my wife and I are very open about, she has multiple sclerosis. She's had it for a few years, or her diagnosis was a few years ago. And so there are times where fatigue and the unfortunate symptoms that come from that, or the side effects of her treatment, come into play. And that's where, I'm really needed. And so we had a really important conversation about it leading up to the decision. And she said, no matter what, I'm going to be supportive of you, no matter what decision you make, but the decision is mine. But knowing I had the support, and knowing that it was an opportunity to continue to make positive change for my family, my kids, my community, my neighbors, for everybody, I just couldn't in good conscience just say I didn't do it. I wanted to at least say that I put my hat in the ring. If the council felt that someone else was more qualified to do the interim role, then that's perfectly fine. I'm still going to continue to do the stuff I was already doing, regardless. In fact, in some level, I've continued to do those things. But I say the same thing about the special election. If the voters decide, you know what, we've had you for 9 months, sorry, we're going to go with somebody else, I'm perfectly fine with that. Because no matter what, whether I'm the council member or I'm just, I'm just somebody who's doing this stuff out of the goodness of my heart, like I was before, like, cool. That's what I want to do. It's for the community. It's for the benefit of the community, and it's making it a better place. But one thing I will say is that night that we had the appointment meeting, I was there in my little office, my stand-up desk, and after they ended the meeting, and they did a swearing in, after everybody had, left the virtual meeting. My family was there standing next to me, and my wife took a picture, and there's me standing there, getting sworn in virtually by the mayor over a webcam. They were so happy, and my kids were jumping up and down, and really excited. And they have been my biggest supporters. And at the end of the day, I do this for my community, but I also do it for my family, because I know it's going to be such a great city for my kids as they grow up. And I hope that they will be as involved and positive an influence on this city as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. I want to ask about, because, in the beginning of the show, I did talk about that you were doing your videos. That was kind of what you were really known for, or that's the way I followed you, was because of all your videos. They were very informed videos. You never gave your opinion. You just gave the facts of both sides, and whether people liked it or not. And there were a lot of people that were like, just pick a side already. You gave both sides of the story, whatever the issue or the topic was. And I always appreciated that. How has that transitioning into now this role as an official, how has that change or not change? And do you plan on continuing doing these videos throughout your entire time as an official?
So yeah, absolutely. This is something I love doing, and my mom recently reminded me that even when I was a kid, that I used to love like filming these videos. I'd make these little like stop motion videos and make videos with my sister. Like just, it's just something I've always loved as a medium, and I love movies. When when we're in the yellow tier, like I am back at that movie theater. I'm fully vaccinated. I just love movies and videos and that experience. But for my videos, I've also liked really talking about informative topics. I um, in school I liked writing essays. Believe it or not, I was really good at it. It's terrible at math, but I could totally write an essay like you wouldn't believe. Um, but for my videos, I have continued them. The Tuesday I was appointed, by the end of that week, I was on a Zoom with the city attorney, and I said, "Hey, here's the deal with these videos. Like, what can I do? What can I not do? I want to be very respectful of that and knowing what the limits are in this role." And he was very candid about it. And he said, as a city council member, there could be times when something comes up, typically with the land use issues, as you may know, as on the planning commission, where you have to be very careful because you don't want to say or do something or imply something where when there's an issue where one person may win and one person may lose, where they can bring up an issue and say, "Hey, this council member is biased. They were talking about it, or they had said how they were going to vote, or they said, they gave their opinion on it ahead of time, or asked for all this information about it. So we would like their vote to be excluded, or we think they should recuse themselves from the vote." And that's really what it comes down to, is that I really don't want to get into a situation where I inadvertently made it where I have to recuse myself, because the members of District 2 are relying on me to represent them. And if through an inadvertent step that I did, I now am not able to vote on something, that's a disservice to the district. And so it's not about, putting a muzzle on me as a council member. It's not about, stepping on my First Amendment rights as a private citizen, but it is about being mindful about what the state of California says around that, and what um, city council members have to be mindful of when they're going into decisions. So that's why my videos about city council items have shifted a little bit, where it's really now talking about, here's what you can expect to see on the upcoming council agenda. And again, not giving my opinion about it. And there's been times when I say like, um, it'd be great if, we had repaving. And then I say, of course, when I say great, I mean in a very general sense. Wouldn't it be great if we had repaving? Yeah, I think that's a general thing everybody can agree on. I'm not saying how I'm going to vote on this item, but it's something that it still aligns with what my goal is of engaging people, getting them understanding what's going on in their city, and knowing how they can speak out on it if it's something that's important to them. So it shifted a little, but was still with the same spirit in mind.
That's awesome. Um, and I'm assuming they're not taking hours and hours to do anymore. It's probably cut down, so there's no editing needed anymore, right?
Yeah, it's funny how from prior to the pandemic, I'd have to read the agenda, read the staff report on the items that were interesting to me or I thought people would like to hear about. I would sit at my kitchen table, I'd film myself, I'd have to do it again and again sometimes. Then I go in, edit it. Yeah, it was, for every like minute of footage I had for a video, or every minute of video, I was probably doing 30 minutes to an hour of like prep and editing. But now with Zoom, now that we're close to the end of this pandemic or the tail end of it, I just start a Zoom meeting. I know what I want to say. I go through it, and I have a little timer on one of my screens that says 10 minutes or less, and it's counting down. So that way, I keep it within a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, that's cut down a lot on the editing. The prep is still there, but I do that all up front, and then just kind of jump on camera and do it.
Of course. That's awesome. I want to get into now your time as an official. You're sitting on the council, you're representing the residents of District 2, businesses, anybody, renters, homeowners. If you're part of District 2, you are the one that representing them. What do you hope to accomplish? I understand that this small part is an appointed, and then you have to go through the special election in November. But what do you hope to accomplish during this time, whether it's an appointed or the full term after the special election? But what are your goals?
All right, so I certainly have goals, but one kind of preface to all of those is the appointment. There were certainly people who made valid points about like it should go to the people, it should go to a vote of the people. We need to push for a special election. I understand the reasoning on that, but I wanted the appointment not just because, you know, people are saying, oh, well, he probably thinks he's got it in the bag. It wasn't that. No matter who was up there, I live in District 2. We needed somebody at the table to have our voices there. And when I kept saying we're going to have the budget talks, we're going to have the priorities for the 5 years, these are important items. You know, those were things we needed a voice at. And so the first kind of like before I say my goals, the first thing that I wanted to accomplish was getting a voice there. I'm certainly happy that it's mine because I feel like, you know, I'm honored to be able to serve the district and the residents and the business owners and be able to move things forward to better our city and our district. So that being said, my well, real quickly, the priorities session, I think it's a great example where we had the levies come up, and Councilmember Perello and I, he's in District 1, I'm in District 2. Well, we both have levies in our districts, and there's a whole hour we could go over of just levies. But know that the levies, they are in need of repair and in some places replacement, and that falls on the county. But we have to, as a city, be good partners to make that happen, because bureaucracy preventing that from happening puts thousands of homes and businesses at risk if a major flood were to come through the Santa Clara River where those levees are, if they were to fail. So District 2, I was there in the priorities meeting. District 1 with Councilmember Perello, we were pushing for it. It's 12:15 a.m. by this point. We're at the end of it. People are exhausted mentally, physically. And I did the math on that. And I said, my other council members, Mayor Zaragoza decided to recuse himself for it. Okay. But we just didn't have the votes on that. We could have gone round and around. We would have been there another 45 minutes, hour, 3 hours. We didn't have the votes on it. I did the math on that. I said, okay, I was willing to let that one go. However, because I was a voice there for District 2, towards the end of the session, I made it clear to the staff and the public still watching, those levies are important. They may not have made this priorities list, but I'm making them a priority for myself. And Councilmember Perello called me shortly after that. We talked about it and said, let's make this a priority for our districts. Doesn't matter what's on that priorities list. This is a priority for us. And the city, to their credit, they stood to that. They have looked at federal dollars to lobby for that and to see how we can continue to secure that. We've met with the county on it, and there has been progress because of it. And I only want to say that, you know, the having a voice there at the table has helped move that forward. I hope Councilmember Perello would have been able to do that on his own, but it's certainly helped to have two council members going at it versus just him on his own, if no voice had been there. Now to my goals. They're quick. So restoring city services, which we are absolutely on the correct trajectory to do. We just passed at the previous council meeting, the Public Works Department moving forward and finding and securing funding to restore all of our work in our parks, our medians, our parkways on our arterial roads, the tree maintenance, and really taking a very serious look at like, all right, it's gone downhill. I think many people will agree with that over the last couple of years. Let's bring us back up to where we need to be, but let's also see how we can improve upon it with longevity. And I keep saying, if we look at drought tolerant or California natives and our medians and our parkways, they're beautiful landscaping, but will require far less water and maintenance than these other beautiful things we've brought in that are not native to this area. So that's when restoring city services. We're looking also at, programming for Parks and Rec coming forward. We're looking at all this programming that had to be cut because of the budget and bringing it back. And I am always going to be an advocate for bringing that back, but what can we do more to enhance it? What did we learn from the recent financial woes we had, but also what did we learn from the pandemic? How can we be even more efficient with some of these services? The second priority I have, or I should say goal, it's not really a second priority because it's a big priority for me, is youth services and youth programming. I've made it very clear in public meetings and in conversations with people that youth is what I've dedicated my career to. That's what I do in my day job. It's what I do outside of work too. I just, when people say the youth are our future, it may sound cliche, but it's absolutely true. If we're not supporting our youth or we're not investing in them now, we are only setting ourselves up for more challenges and disappointments for them later on. We are failing them if we are not supporting them now with the needs that they have. And it's all about prevention. If we invest in preventing all these challenges the city of Oxnard has traditionally seen, then we are only setting ourselves up, if we don't invest in them, to continue to have these costs later on in the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system, the healthcare system, in policing, all this stuff. Let's take away the need for those things by preventing them from ever happening in the first place. And then the last goal is around homelessness and continuing to advocate for that and address it in a way that is effective in what it does, but is also sensitive and a humanitarian effort for the people who are experiencing homelessness or being unhoused, because they're human beings and they need to be able to have the opportunity to get back on their feet. So many of them are not what people see as those, oh, they're addicted to drugs or they are, mentally ill. There are so many people who are experiencing this who you don't see. I mean, the ones you do see who are very visible in the community are certainly ones who fall into the categories people are concerned about, and we should have services for them. But know that there are people who can't afford homes because of our housing issue, who can't afford because of rent costs or housing costs, who live in vehicles or couch surf or live in garages and still go to work every day, still send their kids to school every day, but just cannot afford to have their own reliable, consistent shelter. We need to be able to serve all of those people who fall into all those categories. So that will always be a priority for me as well. So those are my goals.
I appreciate that, Gabe. And of course, I'm going to dissect each of those goals. You brought up the Parks and Recs and city kind of restoring its services to maintain it, the medians, the landscaping, so forth. Mayor Zaragoza, about a month or two ago in committees, brought forward some additional funding so for our parks, to get them back open so they're usable again. City Council voted unanimously on that item, which was a great success for the community. Moving forward, what new changes are going to try to be pushed? Because we see a lot of our playground equipment is outdated. It's deteriorating. It's rusted out. Now, I'm not going to advocate from my side and say, Councilman, go do something about this. But this has been something that I brought up multiple times to council as well as to the Parks and Rec. For my neighborhood park, we have multiple areas that is just rusted out. We have pieces of the equipment that's just missing. The wood chippings that are used are like almost non-existent. You see the little lining that it was supposed to cover. And I'm not saying that it's only my park. There are multiple parks that are facing that. Moving forward and knowing that we have Measure E, knowing that there are other federal funding, state fundings that are coming through, is there a plan to try to address those needs so that residents can truly enjoy those parks that are within their neighborhoods?
Yes, absolutely. And I had made this point at the council meeting where we discussed just this, and it was specific to playgrounds. Our playgrounds across the city, even in my time in Parks and Rec, it's really disappointing to go to some of these playgrounds in our community parks and just see the condition that they're in, and know that some of them are decades old. And it's equally frustrating to know that we just do not have the funding or the bandwidth to replace them. What makes it even more frustrating, I'll use one example. When I was on Parks and Rec, I had the opportunity to go view and write up an assessment on Pleasant Valley Park in South Oxnard. And I met with some of the residents about it as well. And there was an issue of a slide that was missing. And I'm meeting with the residents. How long has this slide been missing? And they said, oh, like 8 years. Well, wait a minute. 8 years? This slide's been missing for 8 years? And they said, yeah. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they're mistaken on that, And so I went to Google Street View, and you can go back in time on that. And they weren't too far off. It was probably like 6-7 years. I could go back, and then the slide was there, and then it wasn't at that point. And I reached out to staff and said, what's the deal? Like, why, how is this a slide that's gone? And what it came down to was, number one, the slide was about $10,000. Number two, the equipment was so old, the manufacturer didn't make that part anymore. And we had to figure out, how do we replace a slide with a part that's no longer manufactured? And in my head, I'm like, number one, I didn't know a slide was that much, but number two, it's like, how did we get into this place where we've deferred maintenance so long that the parts that we need to replace it are no longer available? And I later found that that's a very common issue that happens not just in cities like Oxnard, but cities all over the country. And so at the meeting, I pointed out that we had just earlier talked about the PCI, which is a pavement condition index, and how we shouldn't be shooting for 80, blah, blah, blah. And I pointed out that our roads are functional at a level of 65 and 70. Our playgrounds are not functional right now. Many of this playground equipment has to be closed because young people or kids cannot play on them because it's unsafe or it's missing pieces, right? And think about when you take your family to your park. You're in Marina West, right, Daniel? And having to tell your kids, no, you can't play on that. I'm sorry, it's not available to you, or it's unsafe, right?
Yeah,
And
telling a 3 and a 5-year-old that they can't play on the park, it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is too, as a parent, having to go to a park and look at everything to make sure, is this safe for my kid to play on? We shouldn't have to worry about those things. Unfortunately, with deferred maintenance, with our budget being the way it's been for the last decade, including decreasing the funding of Parks and Rec and of our parks system, we just weren't in a position to be able to do what needs to be done, which is completely upgrade all of those items, right? So Parks did propose to either replace equipment that can be replaced or just completely put new playgrounds where most needed. And I absolutely would have supported that, or did support that, because I've toured many of our parks through my Parks and Rec time and as a council member, and it's needed. We owe it to our kids. We owe it to our families. We can't have it like that. And with the message being that your recreation time with your family is not a top priority for us. That's the message. Whether that's true or not, I don't think it's true. It is a priority. We just can't do it. That's the way people are going to perceive that. And we need to change that narrative. We need people to know it is a priority. Your family is important to us. We want to give this to you. You deserve, at minimum, a park that is usable.
I completely agree with that. And, it's always been one thing that kind of bothered me, was that when budget cuts took place, it's always a senior, it's always the youth services that get cut. It's always our libraries that get reduced hours or shut down for temporarily. And that bothers me, because in the city of Oxnard, over 207,000 residents, the largest young population in the county, and this is what we do to our recreational services. We just cut them. And I get it. It's important to keep those essential services, public works, fire, police going, because as eloquently as Councilman Perrella always puts it, when you flush your toilet, you want the water to go. You want the stuff to go away. And it's true, when you have a medical emergency, you want to make sure firefighter shows up or paramedics. And if there's a thing that you need police services, you want them to respond. Can't say the same for Parks and Rec, but at the same time, like you mentioned, it is very hard to tell a child that, like, no, you can't play on this equipment. Yeah, I brought you to the park, but now we're turning ourselves around and leaving because we can't use our park. And many times I have to take my kids to other parks because my park is just not suitable for my children. So it's sad.
Daniel, sorry to interrupt you, but one thing I want to point out about that too is that first and foremost, our park staff who we have now and our assistant public works director are on it. I mean, residents reach out to them and I'm copied on those emails, and I see them responding to residents right away and saying, yes, we will look into that. They follow up and they're great. You can have the greatest person ever, though, if they don't have the resources they need to get the job done. I mean, there's little that they can do. I was just talking with Marvin Booz and Doug Partello today, and this exact subject came up about what you're referring to. And here's the thing. When our parks are neglected, people don't use them, right? It's like, oh, I'm not going to go. The swings are all rusty, or there are no swings, there's no slide. People don't use them. So then they're more neglected because people don't use them. Then people don't use them because they're neglected, and it's this never-ending cycle. So this concept of reactivating parks, reactivating spaces, is what we're really, what is really one of the strategies we need to be looking at. And I would say Southwinds Park is a really perfect example of that, where they put in that walking track, they put in new lighting, and they made it attractive and safe for people to come out. If you would have looked at that park 6 years ago, 8 years ago, night and day difference. If you go there tonight, Daniel, after work hours and check out that place, it is live. There's people there. There's people walking, and there's great lighting when it's dark. That is reactivating a park and having a positive impact on a community when that happens. And all of our parks throughout the city deserve that. And I think as we move forward and we start upgrading equipment and making it inclusive equipment, not only will we reactivate those areas, but we will draw people in from other neighborhoods or even outside of the city to visit some of those parks, especially the parks that we have in playgrounds put in place that are going to be inclusive playgrounds and accessible to children and adults who have mobility challenges.
And I love that because, of course, on social media, it's always such a great way to find out new information. Mobility challenge individuals being able to enjoy parks and the open spaces, I think it's absolutely amazing. In the city of Oxnard, at our beach off of Harbor, the Mandalay Beach, there is literally a walk path for a person that's mobility challenged to be able to, use their wheelchair to go down as close as they can to the shoreline, and being able to enjoy the beach. That's, I think, is absolutely amazing, and it's a benefit for the community because it's inclusive. It brings everybody together, and it creates a sense of equity because everyone should be treated equal. I want to talk about, you mentioned homeless, and homeless has been a chronic thing, challenge for cities, not just Oxnard, not just California, but across the nation and across the world, constantly dealing with trying to figure out how do we address homelessness. And you brought up a couple of great points, that these are not individuals that are your typical imagery that people created for them, that they're drug addicts, that they're alcoholics, or that they're just mentally unstable. But these are individuals that weren't able to pay the rent because the rent was too high and, the job's not covering it, but that they are doing their best to be able to get by, send their kids to school, go to work, try to be productive as much as possible. There are individuals that believe that it is not the city's job to care for these individuals, that it is not the city's job to house these individuals. And then on the flip side, you believe there are individuals that believe that it is the city's job to create all this housing, create all these services, and get these people off the streets. In California, and this, because you've lived here, the housing inventory that we have is so low. And every year, the state sends out the RENA numbers. And these are, for our viewers, these are the numbers of housing units that need to be built by each city, each county throughout the state. Oxnard has continually been very high RENA numbers, and residents feel that that's unfair for our community when you look at Thousand Oaks, Ventura, Ornimi, and all these other. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to give too much for myself because, as mentioned before, I am a planning commissioner, so I have to be careful with my wording. But I want to ask you, what is the right approach for the city? I know you said your priority was to assist in being able to step in and provide those services. But what do you say to those individuals that say, why do we have to use our tax dollars to be doing this whack-a-mole process when dealing with the homeless?
So that's a really, I think you made some really important points, Daniel. And when I speak with members of the community who think differently than I do, sorry, I had some things come up on my phone. So when I have some differences of opinion with members of the community, I absolutely respect that because they likely have experiences and viewpoints that maybe I have not experienced myself or I haven't considered yet. So I like to hear all of that. However, in the talk about homelessness, it ends up having to be, we'll have to agree to disagree on things when people say what we shouldn't be spending our local tax dollars to address the issue. As now a member of the city council, but even prior to being a member of the city council, even after being a member of the city council, if one day, I'm no longer on council, I feel it's a moral obligation, not only of our city, but us as residents in the community, to care for the people who don't have the things that we have. And I'm not saying let's just shell out dollars and give away free money to people. What I'm saying is we have a moral obligation to help those who need help. And I mean, just to put it in a little bit more, hopefully from an empathetic angle, we talked about how majority of people who are experiencing homelessness or unhoused, you don't see them, right? They go to work every day. Maybe they live in an RV, they live in their car, they send their kids to school every day, maybe live in a garage, whatever. But for people in that situation, imagine if you had only a minimum wage paying job or you had no job. How long would it take you to save up enough money to pay first and last month's rent, pay a security deposit, and ensure that you have a cushion going forward in case something happens and you're not able to make that month's rent? You can dip into your savings or whatever. If you make minimum wage, or I think it's even below like $17 an hour or something like that, it's like mathematically impossible to get to that point, at least not within a reasonable time frame, unless you had zero cost for your housing and you had low bills, no car payment, and to be able to save that amount of money. And I just hope people understand that people who are experiencing homelessness, if they're in that situation where they just cannot afford to stay where they are and now they're between homes, how long will it take them to get a home of their own? And let alone the fact that, as Daniel had mentioned, our housing stock is so low, economics, supply and demand, if there's more demand than there is supply, it's a seller's market. They can name their price for what the rent's going to be. It is mathematically difficult, if not impossible, to get to that point. Getting back to it though, about the city of Oxnard, or our local government supporting the issue, the alternative is to do nothing and allow people to live on the streets, to have no support if they wanted to get support, and to just kind of wash our hands of it and say, good luck, right? I know that if I were in that situation, or if Daniel, someone I know personally, were in that situation, or if a stranger on the street were in that situation, I would hope there are services to help them to get where they need to get, where they want to go as an individual or as a family. Keep in mind, this should not all fall on the city. We have the county of Ventura, the city of Ventura, cities, our neighboring cities in Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, and Wainimi. We all share in this challenge, and we all have a stake in it. We all have a moral obligation to address it. And I want to thank the county of Ventura and the city of Ventura for being partners with the city of Oxnard in this, and moving forward and getting support from the state. There are ways that this is looking to be addressed, because people being upset about it is understandable, but understand also that it's not the kind of thing that you can turn around in like a month or 6 months or even a year to 5 years. It takes time and investment, and it takes support, consistent support from our local governments and our residents to be able to make that change.
Absolutely agree with that, Gabe. Thank you for that information. In the essence of time, I want to go to our third topic. As already mentioned, your appointment to the city council was a short stint, because the second half of that is a special election that will be occurring this year in November. What are your plans? Is your goal to, and I know you kind of already alluded to it, to multiple of the topics that we spoke tonight, but is your goal to run for city council and then have to run again in 2022? Because that's when technically the term of former council member Carmen Ramirez was to end in 2022.
Yes, absolutely. I've mentioned this a couple times in other venues, but no, I am not in this just to have fun or to do it just so I could say I did it or get clout or get name recognition. That's not what I'm about. I'm about serving my community. I feel that I am the right person to serve the community, and I have worked. I have done, beyond what I think is really. I've done beyond what I thought was probably going to be needed of me, and I'm totally grateful of that. I didn't think there'd be so many people from other districts reaching out to me, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm totally great with that. I love this. I wish it could be my full-time job. And I've said that to my employer when they ask, how's it going? Because I love working with people. I love working in the community. I love working in the district. I love working with the staff. It's all about making our community great and being able to problem solve and see what we can do to make this the best possible place that it can be. So absolutely, I'll be running. Last I checked, I was the only person through the FPPC website who's actually filed as a candidate, and I am an official candidate. I've filed my stuff with the city clerk's office. I got my committee. Like, I'm in it. Like, there's no question about it. I'm in it for the special election. I'm in it for the 2022 election. I just as we did with the appointment process, I would never, ever discourage anybody from putting their name in that as well if they feel that they want to try to serve. I encourage people to do that. I would welcome that. That's certainly the way our democracy should work. But I'm throwing it out there that I am absolutely in this for the long haul. I was talking with someone today who said, like, hope, and they were very candid with me and said, I hope you're not just doing this so that you can one day become like an assembly member or a senator or county supervisor or anything like that. I said, no, this is me for Oxnard. All right. Maybe that's in the future. Who knows? But right now, there's so much work to be done. And I'm not in this just as a stepping stone. There's work to be done, and I feel I can do it. And that's why I'm here and why I want to continue to do this.
See, I appreciate that. And I feel that. But then at the other flip side, I feel like you kind of messed it up because we have these term limits now. So it's like, when does your term limit actually start? From the time that you were appointed, the special election, or do you get 13 years versus the 12 years? That should be a good conversation to have with the city attorney
That is a
or
really
whoever's
great
in
question.
charge.
Yeah, I guess I can go back and read Measure B and see what it says on that. It might have some language that would answer that question. I'll go back and look at that.
That's a good future video. There you go. I just gave you a topic for a future video. Gabe, as always, I always appreciate having these conversations with you and hearing your insights on the different topics. Is there any final words you want to give to the residents of Oxnard?
I just want to thank everybody who's reached out, and if they reach out with complaints or compliments, great. I welcome all of it. I'm very grateful to be able to serve the community in any capacity. It's an amazing city. I've grown up here, went to school here. I have so many people who I've met through living here, but also doing all this work within the city, and I would not give that up for anything. And I just am so grateful to be able to have this opportunity. And I not only hope to continue to serve the district well, but that's what I'm doing, is serving the district well. It's beyond hope. It's like doing it. So, and I do want to say happy birthday to Marvin Booz. I went and helped him for a little bit today, and he left out that it was his birthday until somebody told him happy birthday. So I'm giving him a shout out. Happy birthday to Marvin.
There we go. Happy birthday, Mr. Booz. If anybody who follows Facebook knows that Marvin Booz for over 10 years has been volunteering his own time to go out there and trim some trees, bushes, rake some leaves, been doing it great. And finally is getting the recognition for it. So happy birthday, Marvin Booz. We won't ask you how old you are, but we appreciate all of your service to our community. And again, Gabe, I appreciate you joining me tonight and going over these topics and this information. And I look forward to your future run in the special election and down the road, many elections as it takes for you to be able to serve our residents, because I think it speaks volumes, as you mentioned, that you get a lot of people from other districts reaching out to you, that they feel confident that you're going to at least bring the topic up, or whatever their concern is, bring it up or look into it. And I think that speaks volumes, that there's a lot of trust there. So thank you for creating that sense of trust in our community. In an official capacity, because as well as I know, there's not a lot of trust for city government or officials. So to be able to have that is, I think that speaks huge volumes.
Yes. Thank you again, Daniel. I always enjoy these chats and these interviews. So thank you very much for the invite to be here today.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please be sure to join us next week as we speak with Karen Shear, who is school board trustee, a school teacher, and a mother. We'll be talking to her how it's been navigating through the pandemic, and then what does life look like for the next school year. That's right here on Oxnard Live. As a reminder to all of our viewers, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share, hit the notification bell so that you always know when we are live. Also, check back on our past interviews, lots of great content. Also, be sure to visit our website, oxnardlive.net. There you can see upcoming guests as well as past interviews. And just throwing this out there, this Saturday, the 29th, Metrolink will finally have Saturday service right here in Ventura County. It is a great start for an AM trip and a PM trip. So with kids riding free and $10 day passes, you have the opportunity to explore the SoCal region. So keep that in mind. You can get more information at metrolinktrains.com/VC-Saturdays. Again, thank you, Gabe, for joining me. This is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Have a great night, everyone.